They were just a young couple in love, building a life filled with dreams and plans. Their love was the kind that felt unshakable, destined.
Patrick and we had our whole future planned out, and I just thought I was gonna live a fairy tale life from then on.
But beneath the surface, something dark was lurking. What happens when the past refuses to stay buried? When jealousy festers into something far more dangerous?
Don't push me here. All I'm doing is asking to talk to you right now. I'm not asking for anything else.
And how do you protect yourself from a threat you don't even know is there until it's too late?
10-5 with a female right now.
Copy 10-5 with the female.
In a quiet Florida neighborhood, the unthinkable happened. A 25-year-old man was found shot multiple times at the entrance to his home, the morning silence broken by the echo of gunfire.
We knew we had somebody who was smart enough to pick up shell casings at the crime scene.
He then takes the DVR and all the video recording equipment to conceal his own identity.
Patrick was gunned down at the front door of his home.
This is not a random act of violence.
The scene was cold and calculated. No shell casings, cameras destroyed, and every move pointed to a killer who planned it all.
My boyfriend's house is his dad's house.
Where's that?
He's at work. He's on his way.
Ma'am, come over here. I don't know how we're going to get past him and get up those stairs. There's blood at the top of that.
Detectives would soon uncover layers of obsession, jealousy, and manipulation hiding in plain sight.
What kind of person would do something like this is someone who's extremely narcissistic and in that psychopathic domain.
Behind the quiet of the gated property and the warmth of a couple's love story lurked a darkness no one could have predicted.
It's something you see in the movies but never really expect that somebody can be that evil.
This is a story not just of murder, but of obsession that spiraled into something far more sinister.
I just felt this is a nightmare and I've got to wake up from this.
February 27th, 2018 began like any other day for 29-year-old Jessica Devnani. At 7:30 a.m., she left for work in Orlando, Florida, and, as she did every morning, called her fiancé, Patrick de la Cerda. But this time, he didn't answer. At first, she didn't think much of it. It was still early. But once she arrived at her job at Chase Bank and still hadn't heard from him, her concern grew. Patrick was never quiet.
I didn't receive any messages from Patrick, and it's not like Patrick to stay quiet. He's always messaging me.
After a few hours of silence, Jessica felt something was wrong. She made the decision to leave work and check on him. Patrick lived in Deltona, an hour away from Orlando, with his father. Jessica called Patrick's dad, Max, during the drive.
The drive felt like it was forever. I was on the phone with Patrick's dad, Max. Max was not in town, so we both were trying to get in touch with Patrick, and there was no answer.
When Jessica arrived, she ran up to the door, and what she found was every fiancé's worst nightmare.
I just found Patrick was on the floor with a big pool of blood next to his head. I just was in shock.
Shortly after, the Volusia Sheriff's Office received a frantic 911 call.
There was a female that was hysterical. She just found someone dead inside their home, possibly a shot.
10-5 with a female right now.
Copy 10-5 with the female.
Deputies arrived cautiously at the De La Cerda residence in Deltona, a remote property spanning 9 acres and hidden behind woods and a gate. At the entrance, they were met by Jessica Devnani, the 911 caller. Shaken and frantic, she was escorted to a patrol car for safety.
My boyfriend's house is his dad's house.
Where's that?
He's at work. He's on his way.
Unsure if the killer was still on site, they approached with tactical care.
Sheriff's Office, if you're inside, you need to announce yourself now.
Clear. Clear.
Deputies moved in and found the front door ajar, glass shattered. Inside, at the bottom of the stairs, lay Patrick de la Cerda, shot multiple times. Blood stained the steps. He had been caught off guard. Jessica confirmed the body was her fiancé.
I just couldn't believe that this was happening. This is a nightmare, and I've got to wake up from this.
At the medical examiner's office, the details painted a chilling picture. 6 shots fired, 4 hitting Patrick, yet only 2 shell casings were recovered, evidence the killer had picked up the rest, minimizing their trace. These shell casings were large caliber ammunition.
And these shell casings are large caliber ammunition. It's called 300 Blackout. It is a high caliber, high level impact. It's ammunition that goes in an AR style weapon, and it's gonna be a rarity. It's not gonna be a common type of ammunition.
The killer doesn't hesitate. He walks right up to Patrick and pulls the trigger at point-blank range, leaving no room for doubt about how deliberate and personal this act of violence really was.
I mean, that's extremely violent and very personal. And it reflects the degree of intense rage that was present.
Detectives sent shell casings, bullets, and blood samples to the lab for a full forensic analysis, hoping for DNA, hair, or fibers that might identify the killer. Meanwhile, detectives also discovered several valuables left untouched and in plain sight, further convincing them that robbery was never the motive behind this crime. Then came a potential break. Security cameras were spotted, but excitement quickly turned to disappointment.
And I was excited to get in there and get this video and let's see if we've captured this on camera. We went upstairs in Patrick's room where the DVR recording system should have been, was gone, and it was clear that it had been ripped out of the wall and taken. So this tells us that this is a calculated crime.
After finishing their walkthrough of the crime scene, detectives turned their attention to someone who might offer valuable insight into Patrick's life, his fiancée, Jessica. They sit down with her for an initial background interview, hoping to better understand who Patrick was and whether anyone in his life might have had a reason to harm him. Jessica opened up and told them the two had met online in 2017. He was 25, she was a few years older, recently out of a long-term relationship. Patrick was charming and full of life, and they clicked instantly.
He definitely grabbed my attention.
Tacos.
Destroy in town.
He was the outgoing one, she was the quiet type, but together, they just worked. 6 months later, while lying in bed, he proposed.
We were just laying in bed, and he just popped the question to me. I was so happy. It was one of the best moments of my life.
But the morning Patrick was killed, her dream future was shattered and her world had ended. While detectives finished processing the scene, Patrick's father, Max, arrived, devastated. Investigators brought both Max and Jessica to the Deltona district office. Max said he'd been out of town for work. He does construction, but he worked alone, so his alibi couldn't yet be confirmed. Still, his sorrow seemed genuine, and detectives didn't consider him a suspect. Now, detectives needed to find a motive, any reason someone might want Patrick de la Cerda dead. Patrick's father, Max, mentioned a troubling incident from just 3 months earlier. Patrick had argued with a neighbor.
The neighbor and Patrick had some words and rose to the point of violence where the neighbor had pulled a gun and fired shots at Patrick.
Right away, detectives focused on finding the neighbor. Could he have quietly slipped onto the property, lured Patrick downstairs, and pulled the trigger himself? Police confirmed they had responded to the property in early January 2018 regarding that very dispute, which stemmed from a property line argument. But when they checked the neighbor's records, they hit a dead end. Nothing seemed to add up.
And we found out this individual could not have committed the crime because he physically was in custody at a jail facility, and there's no way that he would have been the one to perpetrate the crime.
With that lead closed, detectives continued talking with Max. That's when he mentioned something strange from the morning of the murder. About 4 hours before Jessica found Patrick's body, Max received 2 calls from unknown numbers asking about a delivery at the front gate.
Outside of Patrick De La Cerda's and Max De La Cerda's home, at the gate, there was a sign that said, for packages or delivery drivers, call the phone number. And it was Max's phone number.
Max said the caller claimed to be a delivery driver, asking if Patrick was home. When Max offered to reach out to Patrick and call back, the caller replied, "No, you can't call this number back."
Immediately, more red flags go up. I think it's out of the ordinary for a delivery driver, first off, to call and ask for a specific person. And then when the person that they're on the phone with asks, "Hey, can I find that information out for you?" and then call you right back, and he tells them, "No, don't ever call this phone number. Something's not right. That's not how a delivery driver acts."
Soon after, Jessica called Max, saying she couldn't get a hold of Patrick. That's when detectives started to wonder, was that so-called delivery driver actually Patrick's killer? After speaking with Max, detectives turned their attention back to Jessica, Patrick's fiancé, who points them toward a new suspect, her ex, Gregory Bender.
I told law enforcement that my ex, Greg, for months he was always threatening us because he was very jealous. He said that he was going to harm himself.
Jessica hadn't heard from him in a while, but on the morning Patrick was killed, Greg called her workplace twice. She didn't answer, but after that call and not hearing back from Patrick, she just knew something was wrong. She then tells detectives the full story of her rocky 8-year relationship with Gregory.
I first met Gregory Bender back in 2009. I had just gone on a dating website. I was, I believe, 19 or 20, and he was about 21 years older. I didn't mind the age gap. I felt our personalities clicked right away.
Greg was a wealthy hedge fund manager, charming and intelligent.
But I ignored a lot of red signs. He was very possessive. He said that if I ever left him, that it would never be pretty.
Still, Jessica stayed. Greg controlled the relationship. Jessica was young. He held the power. In 2015, Greg proposed.
But because of his jealousy, I felt like I was scared to leave him. So I just stuck with the relationship.
In 2016, everything changed. Greg was in the hospital, and when Jessica visited, she saw another woman at his bedside.
And I said, "Wow, what are you doing here?" And she said, "I'm his wife."
Greg had been married to a woman named Daymara the entire time. Jessica gave him an ultimatum: leave your wife or we're done. He refused, and so Jessica ended the engagement. Greg didn't take it well.
Gregory was doing everything that he could to get Jessica back. He was texting her, he was threatening her.
Don't push me here. All I'm doing is asking to talk to you right now. I'm not asking for anything else.
For nearly a decade, Gregory Bender had exerted control over Jessica's life. Now she was gone, and for a man with malignant narcissism, that kind of rejection wasn't just painful, it was intolerable. After Jessica walked away from their toxic relationship, she took every possible step to cut him out of her life completely.
I blocked Greg from everything. I wanted him to leave me alone.
But Gregory's obsession didn't end there. Even though she thought the chapter with him was closed, he found ways to infiltrate her new life. In 2017, Jessica met Patrick De La Cerda, and they quickly formed a close bond. However, Jessica felt it was necessary to warn Patrick about her ex's jealousy and unpredictable behavior. She asked him not to post their pictures online, but Patrick refused to hide their relationship. Jessica even created a new Facebook profile. Despite her efforts, Gregory still found the photo of them together, and once he did, the relentless harassment began anew.
Unblock me. Enough is enough. Call me now, or all hell is going to break loose.
Gregory's fixation turned into a dangerous obsession.
He looked up Patrick online. He found where he lived. He found where his mother and father lived and his brother. And he said, "I'm going to harm everyone if you do not leave him now."
The threats escalated, and the intimidation reached a point where Gregory's message was unmistakable. He would not let Jessica go. In response, Jessica finally sought legal protection. She presented Gregory's threats to a judge, and a restraining order was granted. Though Jessica feared the decision might provoke Gregory even further, She hoped that his professional reputation would keep him in check. To further ensure her safety, Patrick installed security cameras at his home, and together, they began making plans to leave for West Palm Beach, hoping the move would bring them peace. However, their plans were cut short. On February 27, 2018, the day before they were set to leave, Jessica received 2 phone calls from Gregory, and that same morning, Patrick was found dead.
Because Jessica had the injunction for protection with the no contact order, the scene that he contacted her at work the morning of the murder, and on top of that, the threat since it happened, the months leading up to this, we really felt that he's a very, very likely suspect.
The constant threats and his actions leading up to the murder made it seem all too likely. But rather than arrest Gregory immediately for violating the restraining order, the detectives decided to approach the situation covertly. They devised a plan to conduct a controlled call. Since Gregory had reached out to Jessica earlier that day, the detectives thought it would be wise for her to call him back while they listened in. Their goal wasn't necessarily to get a confession, but to gather as much information as possible. When Jessica made the call, she was nervous, knowing how dangerous it could be.
He picked up right away. He just said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry about Patrick's passing." And he said, "Oh, I saw it. It was all over the news."
As the conversation unfolded, Gregory was calm, almost rehearsed. His tone seemed oddly distant, almost like he had anticipated the recording. As the conversation shifted, Jessica directly addressed Gregory's violation of the restraining order. She asked him why he had called her on the morning Patrick was killed. Gregory claimed it was an accident. He had dialed the wrong number, thinking it was a coworker.
He's got an injunction for protection. He's not allowed to talk to her. The odds of him accidentally calling her twice, that doesn't seem very likely.
Then, in a surprising move, Gregory suggested they meet in person to talk. This offer, just hours after Patrick's brutal murder, raised more suspicions. The detectives considered the possibility that Gregory, driven by jealousy and his need to dominate Jessica, might have seen Patrick as a rival. Gregory had certainly become a key person of interest in the case.
We had enough to charge him with violating that injunction, and we decided he needs to go to jail. We reached out to the Orange County Sheriff's Office, who located Greg Bender at his house and took him into custody.
With Gregory in jail for violating the restraining order, detectives focused on gathering evidence. They obtained video footage.
We were able to find video footage from a neighbor across the street that showed a vehicle leaving Gregory Bender's residence on the day of the murder in the early morning hours.
The car was registered to Gregory, and the timing matched the events of that day. Detectives linked Gregory to the crime, but they still needed more evidence. The preliminary autopsy confirmed Patrick was shot 4 times, but no DNA or fingerprints were found, suggesting the killer had concealed their identity. This pointed to a premeditated murder. After speaking with Gregory's friends and family, detectives learned that his ex-wife, Damara, might have crucial information.
Damara's attorney tells me that she has information that she believes can help our investigation.
She had seen Gregory writing in a notebook about a plan to kill Patrick. In a late 2017, as their marriage was falling apart, Damara discovered the plan, which included maps, bullet points, and details of how Gregory intended to kill Patrick.
And she had actually seen him writing in this notebook. And one day she goes and looks inside of his notebook and actually finds a plan to kill Patrick.
She confronted him, but he dismissed any involvement.
Hey, this is just fantasy. I would never do anything like this. And she kind of dropped it.
The police arranged to meet Damara in secret, outside of town. After speaking with her, investigators quickly obtained a search warrant for Gregory's house, hoping to find evidence.
The main thing we were looking to find was ammunition that matched that .300 blackout caliber ammunition found at the scene, the murder weapon, and this notebook with the murder plan.
Realizing Gregory could soon be released on bail, they rushed to execute the warrant that evening. They seized Gregory's cell phone, but digital forensics would take time. In his walk-in closet, they found a gun safe with firearms. It was an uncommon type of ammunition. He owned it, and it turned up at the crime scene, but it wasn't enough to directly tie him to the crime. In a chilling discovery, detectives found exactly what they had been hoping for. In Gregory's office, in the trash can, they discovered a hand-drawn map that matched DeMaro's description of Gregory's plan to kill Patrick, complete with routes and details.
The paper had line item directions showing the different routes that could possibly be taken to Patrick's house.
The plan also included using duct tape to cover footprints, switching vehicles at rest stops, and using different license plates. Gregory had devised multiple ways to kill Patrick and escape, showing he'd been planning for a long time.
He probably loved the idea of planning this out and seeing it concretely and admiring it and admiring himself.
The breakthrough came when they found a spent .300 blackout shell casing in a kitchen drawer.
Not a unfired piece of ammunition, but a discharged shell casing of .300 blackout ammunition. This is huge. This is a potential piece of physical evidence that could directly tie Gregory Bender to the crime scene.
They sent it for testing, but with Gregory about to be released, detectives knew they had to act fast. Despite lacking a definitive match, they felt the evidence was strong enough to arrest him. As Gregory Bender left Orange County Jail, Volusia County deputies finished searching his home. Gregory was arrested as soon as he arrived home, heading back to jail.
So Gregory Bender does not get to leave his property as he got there as a free man, and he goes back to the Orange County Jail that he just left.
They informed me the next morning that Greg was arrested. I just felt relieved.
Gregory faced formal charges for first-degree murder. However, he refused to cooperate with investigators, relying on his defense attorneys to build a strong case.
My attorney says don't talk to police, so I follow his advice.
Okay, so you don't want to talk to us about anything?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Investigators turned their attention to Patrick's father, Max's phone records. They discovered a burner phone had contacted Max the morning of the murder, claiming to have a package for Patrick. Could Gregory own the burner phone and be the one who contacted Max for a delivery? To determine this, detectives needed to compare the burner's location data with Gregory's cell phone records. Through subpoenas and search warrants, they tracked the burner phone back to Gregory. This phone had been at his house for weeks, and on the day of the murder, it left his house, traveling along with Gregory's vehicle towards Patrick's home. The phone called Max just before the murder, and later went dead, indicating it may have been disposed of, possibly in a lake near the crime scene.
All the cell phone data shows even more how planned and how detailed and how methodical he was. This is someone that had been planning this for months.
Detectives received ballistic test results, confirming that the shell casings found at the crime scene matched a casing from Gregory Bender's junk drawer. This connection, alongside his cell phone records and the murder plan, made it clear Gregory was tied to the crime. In May 2021, 3 years after Patrick de la Cerda's murder, Gregory's trial began.
I was getting through this difficult time with the support of Patrick's family, his mother very specifically, and she's been very loving towards me. So to be at the trial was very hard, but we would face it together.
Jessica's testimony was crucial in highlighting Gregory's meticulous planning.
Jessica was extremely strong and resilient throughout the process. She had to testify in front of Gregory Bender.
But prosecutors knew more was needed for a conviction. They had to prove Gregory's premeditated intent, and this case made that clear.
We knew going in, they were going to try to spin the murder plan. They were going to spin it as fantasy, spin it as this is just what Greg did in his mind to let out his stress about the situation.
But what they couldn't explain was the shell casing. Only Gregory could have fired that shot. After a week of trial, the jury deliberated for 2 hours before returning with a verdict.
Madam Clerk, if you could please read the verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Gregory Bender, as follows: guilty of the charge of first-degree murder as charged in the indictment.
Gregory Bender was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
There was just a flood of emotions when Greg was convicted. I did feel, of course, justice was served.
Jessica wondered what Gregory had hoped to gain from all of it. He ended up losing everything, his luxury home and cars, and now faced a life in an empty prison cell.
Gregory's planning was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime case. It's something you see about in the movies, but never really expect that somebody can be that evil.
Patrick's life was full of promise, with dreams of a future filled with family and love. Sadly, his bright future was tragically stolen.
I want Patrick to be remembered with nothing but a sense of love because of the love that he had to show everyone.